Let you go.
We're all ready to go? We call this meeting to order. This is Beaufort County Public Facilities, Monday, May the 16th. And call this to order. If you would rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sarah, we've done the proper notifications on FOIA.
Yes, sir, we have.
Good. I need approval of the minutes from somebody, if you'd be so kind.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Second. And I got out of order, but that's okay. Are there any objections to the approval of the minutes from April the 18th? Seeing none, those are approved without objection. I'll come back to approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion on that.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mark.
I'll second.
Thank you, Alice. Any discussion on the agenda? Any objection to it? Seeing none, that'll be approved without objection. Sarah, do we have anybody who wants to speak on citizen comments?
No, sir, we don't.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Jared, looks like you're up next for your report.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Rodman, and appreciate it. I told my wife I need a new blue shirt, so hopefully it doesn't make anybody dizzy staring at it on the screen. She's only got so many options when I give her. She can pick any shirt you want as long as it's blue. So just a few updates, things going on inside the engineering division. On transportation, US 278, we are working through trying to find get the additional scope for the independent traffic going. We had a good coordination meeting with the town of Hilton Head last week and a potential consultant to help us out with that. We're pretty close on what that needs to look like, and hopefully that it hits all the needs between Senator Davis and the town and everybody that's made comments. So we're working towards that. Hopefully that is going to come in for a lot less than $1 million and the 6 to 9 month timeline that was discussed previously when that was introduced. So more to come on that. In capital projects, as far as our pools, everybody's aware of the pool situation, and specifically the Bluffton pool being closed. We've entered into emergency contract, and issued a notice to proceed with the contract about a week and a half ago on that. The materials have been ordered and should arrive here later in May. Once they arrive, the contractor anticipates about a 12-week construction timeline. So that'll take us through the end of the summer for the Bluffton pool to be updated and ready to be reopened. Public Works, this week is Apwa Accreditation. So we have an on-site accreditation committee here taking a look at all of our operations and our functions inside Public Works. We're hoping for a good report on that. A lot of work has gone through to prepare for that over the last almost 2 years. We've been working on compiling this and getting ready for accreditation. If successful, we'll be the 5th department, Public Works department in the state to achieve this recognition. So we're super excited about that. And the terminal improvement project at Hilton Head Airport, we were able to put that project out to bid as discussed previously. It went out to bid on May 8th, and bids are due back on June 9th. So our goal is to have a clearer picture of the overall cost and then be in the position to award that project later in the fall and September timeframe. So just a quick update of other projects that don't necessarily always make it for approval, but just kind of some things that are going on inside the engineering division.
Well, thank you for your hard work. And I guess as you put together the contract for the second independent review, that'll come back through. And
yes,
whatever committee you can get to first in the interest of time is probably going to be okay.
Absolutely. Yes,
even if it's go directly to council. Well, that takes us to item number 8, which is consideration of an ordinance for a sales tax referendum for transportation items, potentially for this November. Why don't you kick that off, give us a little background and take us where you want to on that.
So appreciate that. And so first of all, in the agenda packets, one thing to notice, there was 3 documents that the TAC committee put together. One is a memo from the chairman, from Dean Moss, and he'll be up here in just a second to present on that. Second just was a 1-pager basically condensing the project list. And then third is an ordinance. We're trying to put all these documents with a bunch of different people together in short time frame. So there was a slight discrepancy in there. So have an update, and we'll share this to all those that are present. So the memo was the correct version, the project update list, as well as the ordinance were the two that needed tweaking. So they all match, and we'll share that on the screen when discussing, as well as send that information out to all after the project. But just a recap of what's been going on and where we are. So County Council commissioned the TAC committee to be established in February. We've been working hard for almost 3 months. Staff worked really hard at the beginning to get everybody moving forward. And then basically, again, Chairman Dean Moss really took charge and walked us through and helped collaborate with all the folks. It was great discussion, and I think y'all will be well represented in what he has in the memo and what Dean will present with you here today. So with that, Dean, if you'll come forward.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity, members of council. I appreciate it. I'm going to not take you step by step through this memo. I'm just going to indicate that this memo reflects essentially the process we went through. And I will say a couple of things, and then we'll work through the project list. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to do this. The folks that were appointed by council to help with this were wonderful. They did a great job. A lot of very good thinking went into this. Good attendance from members, both from the municipalities and from council representatives. I will note we did not get but one attendee one time from Yemassee, and no one came from Hardyville. So just bear that in mind as we go through this. The recommendations I'm going to present to you were unanimously adopted by the group. There were no abstentions, there were no objections. There were a few things we had to work out to get there, but as usual, as you all understand, once that was done, there was a strong sense of support for the recommendations in this memo, with one exception. And this is important, and I was asked specifically by members of the committee to make this point. There was not unanimity on when this referendum should be held. Approximately half of the people on the committee wanted it done right now. The problem is too great. We're growing too fast. We've got to do something. And the other half of the committee basically said this is absolutely the wrong time to do it. The economy's lousy. There's inflation. You have a war, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of no agreement. If you look in the memo, what you'll see is the language we agreed to was that the referendum question to be placed upon the ballot at the earliest feasible date. So that's a political connection between the two sides. But anyway, your charge to us was basically to bring you a proposed project list and or categories for the referendum questions. Secondly, the amount of the sales tax to be collected. And thirdly, and or the duration of the sales tax collection period. We are recommending to you a 1% sales tax to be levied at the voted on at the earliest feasible date and then levied to last for 10 years. We project that sales tax over that period of time will produce about $700 million. That's based upon an assumption of the growth rate in the county staying more or less where it is at the same rate, and the tourists population staying also in the same rate. I will point out, we don't have precise detail for this, but the estimates are that between 40 and 50% and possibly more of this sales tax money comes from tourists and visitors to the county. With that as a background, as you know, we basically, we met 10 times over this period of time. And as Jared indicated, a lot of work from county staff. They did a fabulous job. They were very much instrumental in making this thing happen. So we looked and came up with two categories of projects. First are a series of specific projects, and I will go through those in a minute. But they are the traditional approach that we've done before. So much for this road improvement, so much for, XYZ trails, so much for fixing this problem over here. And so we went through that, and the projects that we came up with effectively are across the county, Northern Beaufort County, Southern Beaufort County, and they address the most significant traffic issues, I believe, that we have in the county, generally following the guidelines from the LATS study, which is done. That's the local low country area transportation study done by LOCOG. So we stayed pretty close to their priority system. And we are allocating about half the money, about $220 million for projects south of the Broad River, about $115 million north of the Broad River. Second package were a series of what for lack of a better term, I'm going to use the term buckets. It's not the technical term, and we don't call it that in the memo, but it is essentially a collection of activities which create pots of money for council to utilize to deal with specific categories of projects that we may not even understand yet. An example would be resilience. We know that tides are getting higher. We know that things are happening out there. We have a lot of roads in this county that are very low, very close to the level of tides. At some point, we're going to have to raise those roads. Which ones they are, we're not sure. Which ones are most important? Those are decisions that we're going to leave to you and the staff to decide what the priorities are on these kinds of things. But there's those. There's dirt road paving in the rural areas. There's repaving, a pot for repaving roads all over the county, whether they're state roads, local roads, or county roads. There are pots for essentially safety, traffic improvement projects, small projects at intersections, which will make the road safer, make traffic move more quickly through these congested intersections. So there are a series of those. There's also a recommendation to deal with mass transit issues, specifically bus systems, but also ferry discussions in terms of what we might want to do in the future for ferry. We do not have plans for these things yet. So essentially the essence of the priority is we ought to move forward with some serious planning on countywide mass transit plus countywide ferry systems, if that chooses to be something we want to follow up on. So a penny sales tax or a 1% sales tax for 10 years. Let me go through the specific projects. If we could put those up, I'll take everybody through them. So the first project is Highway 170, $80 million, looking at the problem that we're facing from 462, the intersection at 462 down to 278. I know that the county is working on a project to start and kind of expand and get ready to think about that in detail right now. So, but that's top of the list because of the impacts of traffic on that section of the road, and they're just going to get worse. And we know this. Secondly, Highway 46 improvements. It's been a priority for a long time, particularly the area from the traffic circle out to the Jasper County line, but also work from roughly Buckwalter Parkway out to the traffic circle, focusing principally on improving safety and improving the operation of various intersections. We're very, very focused on the notion that this is a scenic highway. It's a designated scenic highway. And so we don't want to do anything on that highway that in any way affects that designation. So this is going to take some thinking and some planning from staff and engineers to figure out the best ways to fix that. We've got $20 million in there for that. Secondly, Bluffton Regional Road Network. There's a lot of projects on the LAT list in the Bluffton area. And many of them are important. Some are less important. Some are on state roads. Some are on city streets, whatever. So we are suggesting that a $40 million be put into that fund and that the town of Bluffton go through their priority list and come back to council with their recommendations for what the priorities are in that section. Fourth, Hilton Head Municipal Projects, us $40 million there. Again, the town of Hilton Head has done a lot of planning. They have priorities. And so the recommendation again for us is that you work with the town of Hilton Head Island, let them decide what the priorities are for the projects that they have, come back to you with those, and then work out however that business arrangement needs to be between you. 278 Project Enhancements, we have $40 million in there for that. These basically are improvements to the project on the Bridges project, the connection project between Moss Creek and Gumtree Road area. It was generally conceived of as principally enhancements of one kind or another, whether it's landscaping, whatever it is to improve that project and make it go smoother. In Northern Beaufort County, US Highway 21 and 21 business and corridor improvements, $75 million. On Rebo Road, from the bridges over to Paris Island, all the way up to Boundary Street at Town Hall, there is a lot of opportunity to improve that right of way. It's not, I don't think, a question of expanding it as much as it is to make it more efficient, to make it more attractive, to make it a more useful street. I will give you an example since I'm a resident of Port Royal. In about, well, I'd say right now, if you try to get from downtown Port Royal to Ladies Island, you will stand in traffic up all the way back down to Paris Avenue. In many cases, people trying to get up and cross that bridge. We've got to fix that problem. It's crazy out there. So that would be also include work on Boundary Street, wrapping around to Carteret Street, which was basically Highway 21 business, coming in and improving that route. Again, in many cases, we're not talking about expanding things here. We're talking about making the existing right-of-ways more efficient and safer. And then finally, on the major projects, Ladies Island corridor improvements, $40 million. As you remember, when we did the 18 bond issue, we had a number in there for the project, those projects in that area, that was woefully insufficient for the amount of expense that will be incurred in developing that. So this adds to that pot and enables that project to expand a little bit. There are lots of places in and around Ladies Island that have in some cases materialized since 18 that really need attention. So those are the major projects. I think the number I had was $325 million allocated to those projects. All right. In addition, as I said, I'm calling them transportation improvement projects. Mass transit, we've got $25 million in there. And as I said, a focus to begin with on planning and figuring out exactly what the capital investments over the long term need to be. There's enough here to do the basics, I think, to get started, but we don't know yet, and we won't know until we do some work on that. Safety, we've got $50 million in there for safety, general safety improvements along roadways and intersections, including pedestrian accommodations. There are plenty of places in this community where it is unsafe to cross a street. You can't, the streets separate parts of the community in such a way that you can't get across. And so this is one of the reasons that these dollars are there, is to figure out how to solve those kinds of problems. I mentioned resilience. There's $20 million in there. Improvements to transportation infrastructure to against flooding, sea level rise, stormwater, drainage issues, things like that we know we're going to have to deal with going forward in this county. Dirt road paving, $50 million. And there are dirt roads all across the county that will need some degree of attention and paving. Resurfacing, $60 million. As I said, all the streets in the county, road resurfacing, preservation of all roadways, state, county, and municipally owned throughout the county. And the goal is to improve the overall pavement condition of roads across the county. Pathways, $50 million. As you remember, in the 18 referendum, we had $10 million in there for that. That proved to be, again, woefully short of just simply doing the list that council approved for that referendum. I believe we were at least $30 million short on that one. In addition, the county has approved now a pathways and pedestrian plan. So that is a feeder into this that we need to look at in terms of the bike and pedestrian plan that you did. We suggest, though, that priorities right now be given to those projects that were promised in the 2018 referendum and have not been completed. Transportation technologies, access roads, another $50 million. These are planning, design, right-of-way acquisition, construction of access roads to improve connectivity. If you look in the LATS plan, you'll find new road listed as projects. There's real issues here to make things move more smoothly and connect communities better, and major roads, and get traffic moving in different directions. In addition, we have transportation technologies, which are coming along rapidly, as you can imagine. Smart intersections where the lights are timed based upon actually the line of vehicles at any given intersection or lack thereof. We've all sat at lights when there's nobody coming the other way and we're kind of stuck there waiting for the light to change. The idea here is that this kind of thing gets fixed. And then long-term demand reduction, green belts. In the statute that allows us to do what we're doing, there is a use of these funds for green belts. Undefined, but Charleston's experience and the experience in other places in the state indicates that in a general sense, buying property and preserving it is a reasonable expenditure of these funds. We looked at it a little differently. We looked at it essentially as a way to target key properties particularly along these major highways, so that we can essentially start to reduce the traffic loads. Again, complicated process, complicated project, but it's clearly one of those things that could help us in the long way. Again, we recommend there, and I'll get to that the Rural and Critical Lands Board that already exists and the way it operates is a good way to start to move forward with this project. We had some additional recommendations for you. County Council should create an oversight committee to help you with this. And I think it should generally be mirrored on the structure of the Transportation Advisory Committee that you established previously. But they should meet every quarter or thereabouts to help you look at particularly when we're getting to the funding of these pots of money. You're going to need some help looking over the alternatives and what people want to do, because I can guarantee you there's going to be all kinds of people want to do things. You need somebody to help you with that. And I think we suggest they make a call each year for these types of projects, and they can come from anybody. They can come from the cities, they can come from the county, they can come from special purpose districts. It just depends. And we set up suggesting priority indexes for these various pots of money. We suggest to you that these big projects should be revenue bonded. The quicker we have these funds and we're in a position, the better off we are. The amount of money, as we all understand, that is available or coming available from the federal government right now is huge. And to the extent we have projects ready to go, we're ready to move on those, it dramatically increases our ability to reach those targets. I believe that we have the ability to add at least another almost another 100 million, 200 million to the pot, maybe more in terms of making this work. Some people say $1 billion. I don't. Mass transit. I've spoken to this before. We suggest that the existing transportation authority, Palmetto Breeze, be brought to the table and work with them to do the planning necessary in mass transit, so that we integrate what's already out there and what their plans are and what they know we can do with what our long-term plans are. Again, I come back to my first major point. There was disagreement in the committee about when we should do this. So as you give deliberation to these recommendations and the determination of what and how we should proceed, I just want you to be aware of that. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Well, thank you for a very comprehensive report. Let's go to members of council. If you have any questions for Dean, clarifying or whatever it might be. Let's go there and then we'll talk about where we go from here. York, do I see your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know I was going to go first, but Dean, I just want to say thank you for as the chairman said, a very comprehensive report. I am elated, really, with the time it took, the short time it took you all to put this together and to actually put some focus on council in this county in a direction to pursue. So I wanted to just say thank you, and I appreciate your committee working with this. And I know it hadn't been easy, but they had the right person for chairmanship. So thank you for that. There's a couple of things in here, Dean, I just want to just echo, and I like the access road. I think we need to emphasize more and more green vehicles and that service. So I like that in there. Just want to make a comment about dirt roads and resurfacing roads. And you use a language in there where it's specifically to be developed. I don't like that language. And I'll say that because in a rural area like mine and Gerald, there may be dirt road needs that should be prioritized. But generally what happens is that they may get bumped because there's a development that's happening and it places a lot of emphasis on that developer. So I just don't like that language because I want to make sure that dirt roads in my district has just as equal chance of getting paved as anyone else, and not be threatened by having to be developed. So I want to make that comment. The other thing that you have on the resurfacing $60 million of paved road in the county. In parentheses, you have state, county, and municipality owned roads. I just want to reverse that as a priority. Sometimes when you have things in a priority listed like that, the first one gets heavy priority. I really like the reverse, which basically says municipality, county, and then if anything left over, state. I think the state has funding from all different parts that they can actually do their own road, and we don't need to be taking on state roads if we don't have to. So I'll just make those comments. Thank you, sir. Other than that, I would like the report. Thank you.
Paul, do I see your hand?
You did. A couple of things. First of all, thank you very much for all your work, not just you, but all the members of the committee. I know it was tedious and long, and thank you for that. I'm really excited that you included the green belt portion in there because it dovetails very nicely with what we're trying to accomplish in terms of traffic and roads, because if we spend it wisely, there'll be hopefully less traffic in some of those areas. So thank you for that. I know the legislature is moving in that direction, trying to pass some legislation that authorizes a penny or a half penny or a quarter of a penny or whatever for that same purpose, standalone. So this just incorporates it into something else, which is, as you say, is permissible. So I'm really excited about that. But thank you very much.
Hey, Alice?
I'm really glad to see the resilience category on there. I had occasion to go out on St. Helena Island with a full moon Saturday, watching the water rise past Hunting Island. And I've seen on the news, like Tybee Island, they're having to raise that road to Tybee Island. I'm assuming that's what this money could be used for with those kind of situations.
I would think so. I think it again, it's the kind of thing that the intent was to protect us and folks living in the county against the flooding of streets and the issues that come from that, the rusting of vehicles, the risks, the danger, and in cases of big storms, the conceivable problem that folk could be isolated and not be able to get off some of these remote islands. So,
and I wanted to also, I know the committee worked very hard and lots of hours, and staff did too. Wanted to say thank you for that. In particular, the items for the green space, knowing that it could be smaller parcels. And what we usually do is rural and critical lands, and also the mass transit. We really need to emphasize the mass transit, and glad to see some dollars there too.
Okay, others? Joe?
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah, Dean, kudos to what others have already said. I know it wasn't an easy task for you to chair that group of individuals that you were working with, but through it all, you all worked together and have provided what I think is a great list of projects. My only hope and concern right now is that I realized that there was a dollar figure provided for each item. And I just hope and pray that we don't make the mistake this time that we made in the first referendum, and to the point where we don't have the dollars available to cover the number of projects that we have in this package. So to your credit, great job.
Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you, Joe.
Others?
I'll go, Stu.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yep, and I agree with everybody else. I wasn't sure what to expect when you put your committee together, but it is so simple but so detailed of exactly what you've done. So I commend you, and I know Bill Fuge was one of my appointees, and his eyes were open whenever everyone started talking about it. So obviously we've spread this out over the county, and it seems like that there's more stuff. I'm from Bluffton, more things get spent in Bluffton because that's where the need is coming up. But when you start talking with the green belts and things like that, where there's any discussion of trying to get more golf carts for a village style kind of trips as opposed to get people off the roads, or how did y'all?
I think that we did not discuss golf carts specifically, but I think the notion on the trails funding it's a broad enough category. So that to the extent that there are places where, a golf cart trail is, the Spanish Moss Trail, for example, is 12 feet wide. And that's used by bikes and people all the time. That would be sufficient for a golf cart to be able to go this way. You don't want to mix those with the bikers and the walkers, but again, those opportunities are there. And I think there's money in there that can be dealt with for some of that, but we did not deal with it specifically.
And then one more question, and obviously everyone says we need it, which that's something that Bill Fuge had said when I spoke to him. And I think we looked at before that we wanted to do it during a midterm or election year. So if we didn't do it this year, it almost would have to wait until the presidential, the 24. Is that kind of what your thoughts were if it wasn't done this year?
Yeah, nobody talked about 23.
Okay.
Because we've had experience with that and it didn't work. So I think everybody agrees it's either got to be November or we got to wait 2 years.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? A couple comments from my perspective. We go back to the Bluffton piece, and in there you said it would be determined by the Bluffton Council. I'm sorry, the Bluffton Council. Do you envision that would still come back to County Council for approval?
Absolutely. And I mean, the way I see it, it would be, you'd be spending the funds.
Right.
In other words, they'd come to you and say, okay, we've looked at all of our LAT's priorities and our priorities are A, B, and C, or D, or whatever. And they would come back to you. That would go into your normal engineering review process, working cooperatively with them, but the projects would be driven from here. That's how I envision it. I can't dictate. You can do it any damn way you want, but that would be the way I would expect you would pursue it.
The one that's come up that we've all talked about is the 5B, as we're all aware. And I do know from speaking with Eric, I know he had to leave. I think the administration's stance would be if 5B was in there, it makes it extremely difficult to pass the referendum. So I guess the question is, in your theory of they decide later on, is that something that would be decided before we go to referendum, or would that be on the run?
Oh, no, this would be afterward.
Okay.
I mean, the bottom line was we knew exactly what the issue was with 5B, and that's why it does not say 5B. If the council, if Port Royal Bluffton Town Council decides that's a project they want to follow up on, well, that's a decision for them. I did not want it to have to be a decision for y'all, because I know that there's a lot of strong feelings on it, and we don't need that fight right now. Was that?
I think you set it up in a very useful way. I guess I'll also wonder in my mind, given that time's a little bit short, and that once we approve it, we can't advocate for it. But up until the time that we advocate for it, we have the opportunity to talk about it publicly like we're doing now. So something I think for staff to think about, and Paul, in Joe's absence, is whether we want to have more than just one typical public hearing that we have with an ordinance, whether it would be useful to have more than one or do them geographically in some form as a combination of education. I think lastly, I think you've set up the 22 versus 24 in a very creative way. And my sense is that as a council, we'd be better to wade into the ordinance as you have it, knowing that at some point, but probably not at first reading, we would have to address that particular issue. But by addressing it later in the sequence, we'd probably be smarter. That would be my sense, but people may want to do it differently. I don't know about that. So I think the question on the table is, are we prepared to advance this proposed ordinance and sales tax referendum to council for first reading and consideration next Monday? I'll look for a motion on that in a second.
I'll make a motion. We move it forward to full council.
I'll second it.
Okay, well, we have 2 seconds. Any further discussion on that, recognizing that a lot of our discussion will take place at council? And it also strikes me that it may be necessary, as everybody gets into this, to have another, potentially a workshop or a public facilities meeting, just so we can get into more detail than we might otherwise do at a council meeting. Did I see York?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support this motion to bring it forward to council, and also want to say that if we do a public, and I suggest that we do a public meetings across the county, at least 3 across the county, and if more. But I like the language that Dean has in his memo. We are not just behind the 8 ball, we're under it. So with that statement, that's where I stand at this time. We are under the 8 ball. We need to get out of it. Thank you.
I don't know if I could hear everything on that, but as far as getting the word out and talking around the county, that is something we're looking at as staff. So in addition to this meeting, and then what would be required as 3 readings and a public hearing for the ordinance, staff would most likely coordinate with the municipalities and take the memo that's been written by the TAC committee and go present that at each of the municipalities over that same 6-week time period. So that's what we've talked about internally. We haven't finalized that, but that was our strategy as far as making sure all the parts of the county are aware of what's been considered.
Okay. Are there any objections to moving this forward as motioned? Seeing none, this stands approved for movement to council next Monday for consideration at a first reading. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to the team that was there. I see Craig's here. I see Dean's here. Frank is here. If I'm missing anybody that was members, I know the municipalities had an involvement and had people there. Good. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for your work. Okay, let's move on. The next item is update on solid waste.
Yep. So this is our solid waste management plan. This is something that we review periodically and update. So with us is Cindy Carter, and she'll be taking us through some of the updates of changes that we're looking at and making sure we're planning for the horizon. So Cindy.
Good afternoon, everybody. The South Carolina Solid Waste Policy and Management Act of 1991 requires local governments to maintain a solid waste management plan. Our most recent plan is 9 years old. So as solid waste management, the needs in Beaufort County continue to evolve, we elected to update the solid waste management plan so it would be reflective of our vision and goals moving forward. So we retained Abby Goldsmith Resources. She interviewed municipalities and county staff, came back with a draft plan in December of 2021. We provided a copy of that draft to our solid waste recycling board in January of this year. And then subsequent to that, had a workshop in March. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Howard and Councilman York Glover for attending that workshop. There were a lot of comments and edits, and we've gotten back what we hope to be the final draft dated March of 2022. We want this to be a working document. Ms. Goldsmith did use the comprehensive plan for some of the information, as well as some of the goals that we have. It's user friendly. And we also talked to the board about the fact that if they wanted to review it each year in March to make sure we did hit those goals, or if we had something that was still outstanding. So just want to let you know where we stand. Once this is finalized, we'd submit it to South Carolina DHAC, and they would have a template of what our plans are. Any questions?
I guess a question from my standpoint, Cindy, are there some things that you need from us, or you want us to look at it and vote on something at some point in time? What are next steps to help you?
Not at all, sir. It's just a matter of we wanted to let you know the plan had been updated. Okay. And obviously, Jared will mention the next steps will be towards our MRF.
Okay.
Yeah, so if there's any comments that council has of the plan, those would all be welcome. And then part of the steps, as we'll be talking about next, is our MRF, or material recovery facility. So all that's outlined in the plan. So, okay.
Is that something you'd maybe like to come back and finalize comments at maybe our next PFC?
Yeah, if there's any additional comments, or anybody has a chance to read it and provide any comments, we'll incorporate that and make that a final copy. And Cindy, does that need to come back for any approval, or is that just a final copy?
That would be just a final copy. So if nobody has any comments, we will submit it as is.
Okay, so I think what it says to each of us is we need to look at it relatively soon. If we have some comments, pass it along, and we'll go from there.
You can get those comments either directly to me or to Cindy, and we can facilitate.
Okay, good. Any further comments on the solid waste plan? Seeing none. The next one is number 10.
All right, so this is a resolution for some right-of-way acquisition at Bluffton Parkway and River Ridge and Flat Creek Drive. So this is as you turn off 170 and you get on the Bluffton Parkway. This is the intersection at the new school there at River Ridge Academy and Hampton Lake subdivision. So we were requested a while ago and prompted by a school district to investigate the possibility of installing a traffic signal at this location. This is part of our access management plan. There is a signal scheduled to be at this location once it meets the warrants. So they asked us to do a signal warrant analysis, of which we did. And there are a fair number of kids that are crossing the road right there. There's actually a guard that's there part of the time to help that crossing. So we took a look at it, and it did meet the warrants, not necessarily on that specific warrant, but on other warrants. So our goal is to move forward. Once you have a warrant in place, the goal is to move forward as quickly as possible. So with that, we're currently under design with our on-call traffic engineering consultant, and are going to be able to try to implement this hopefully prior to the start of next school year. We're going to use a phased approach in that. There's a long lead time with the actual mast arms. Normally it's a 6 to 9 month lead time, but it's much larger than that due to the current conditions in the economy. So we're going to move forward with implementing temporary poles and design the permanent poles in tandem. But in doing that, we're also working not only on the design, but the right-of-way acquisition at the same time. So we have to acquire a little bit of right-of-way on each side of Bluffton Parkway on the Hampton Lakes and on the school property. The final acreage, it's not a major amount of acreage, and the final cost is yet to be determined. But this resolution is to authorize the county administrator to execute those documents once determined. This would all be paid out of Bluffton Road impact fee balance, which has a current balance of close to $4 million. So that is what this resolution is about, and I'll gladly take any questions.
Based on whatever the dollars turn out to be, will that have to come back before us?
It would based off the dollars, but we don't anticipate it to be major acreage.
Okay.
I mean, much less than an acre. I mean, this is
kind of minor.
just basically some sightline right around for the new locations of the mast arms.
Questions for Jared on this right-of-way acquisition? Don't see any. The pictures are small on the screen. I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mark, and then York with the second. Any objection to this? Hearing none, this stands approved without objection. That takes us, we got two contracts, 11 and 12. Why don't you tell us about both of those? Maybe we'll vote on them together.
Okay, 11. So this is recommendation of award of Boundary Street and Rebo Road signal timing and crash analysis. So this is a commitment out of our Boundary Street plan. We had a Tiger grant, which had several performance metrics reporting required over the 5 years thereafter the project is completed. So just with anything engineering, we know how to make it difficult. So this is not only looking at just Boundary Street, but those signals, there were 7 signals as part of the Boundary Street project. But those signals are tied and connected to other signals. And it basically makes an L shape and turns down Rebo Road. And the brain of the whole signal is at Ladies Island Drive there at the bridge. So that is the controlling, as Sarah's bringing up the diagram, that is the controlling signal for all these signals as outlined. So the major factor was just for the L shape, but then if we're going that far, it made sense to us to continue down Boundary Street to all the way to Charles. There's 2 additional signals in that direction. And then as well, there's 1 more signal on Rebo at Paris Avenue. So we'll be looking at 20 signals at all, and then whatever retiming or upgrades are required will be implemented from that. So all in all, this is a contract-based scope for $175,000. We have a 10% contingency on there. So a final cost not to exceed $192,830. So this too would be paid out of north of the Broad impact fees with a balance there of a little less than $700,000. So that is the staff recommendation on this one.
Questions for Jared on this particular one? I can't see who's on the line, so speak up if I can't see you.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
This analysis, what is it going to actually show us as far as is it traffic flow?
Yep, it'll be looking at a few different things, but traffic flow. So one, what measure of traffic? Boundary Street project was a safety and capacity based project and enhancement. So one is the capacity actually increased, and I drive on that each day, so I seem to think there's a lot of traffic out there. Second is probably even bigger is safety component. That was a major component with the median, making the divided median there. So the signals will be looked at that. There's a few other metrics that get into level of service as far as level service for not only vehicles, but for pedestrians and for bicyclists. So a couple different metrics that'll be looked at and evaluated.
And are any of these going to be adaptive controls?
So they already are adaptive.
Already are, okay. Okay. For those who don't know, adaptive controls basically ones that are computer run.
That's right.
Smart.
That's right.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, tell us about number 12.
So number 12 is, as Cindy mentioned, is talking about the MRF. Oh, excuse me. Nope, skipping ahead. Number 12 is hauling services. So this was a RFP that was advertised in March. This is for the collection at our convenience centers for the rental of the cans that are there, as well as the hauling to the landfill and designated waste areas. So our current contract runs out at the end of the fiscal year. So we put this out on a routine basis. We put it out in March. The bids closed in April, and we had 3 proposals of those haulage services at each of the 9 convenience centers. The final price is just an estimated price because this is based off unit rates and actual tonnages. So the final tonnage is, or the final estimated cost that we have budgeted is $1,830,000. This would be for a 3-year initial term and then the option for 2 additional annual renewals. Republic Services was the low bidder, and they would be recommended for the contract as presented.
Okay. Questions or comments for Jared? Again, I can't see folks online, so speak up. Question for you. We're going to talk about number 13 in a minute, which is the design for the recycling. If we get that in, and this is a 3-year contract, how would that get adjusted? What would happen?
So those are actually separate. So we separate our recycling hauling from our waste hauling. So this is just household waste. Recycling hauling also has the component of processing and marketing. So that's the reason we separate that. That contract, and we'll get into that in the next item, is due for renewal at the end of next year.
Okay.
What about yard waste hauling? Is that separate too?
That's a separate hauling,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Any comments on this contract? Seeing none, let me look for a motion on both 11 and 12, which is first one's the Boundary Street project for $192,000 and change, and then the hauling contract, which is about $1.8 million.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract for Boundary Street and for the hauling contract award. for
Second.
solid waste.
Second?
I'll second it. I second it.
Okay, I think it sounded like Paul.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on either of these contracts? Any objection to either of these contracts? Seeing none, these 2 stand approved without objection. That takes us to number 13.
All right, this is the recommendation of award for the design and engineering of the material recovery facility, our MRF. So as Cindy mentioned in our updated solid waste management plan, one of the components that we've been talking a lot about is our material recycling facility, So we came, I believe it was in March earlier, to PFC to talk about a sustainability report or suitability report that we have worked on previous part of last year. And our task at that time was to the consultant to find us a 40 or 50 acre site somewhere south of the Broad that we could host all of our sustainability campus. So material or recycling, composting, transfer station, everything that we have imagined in one site. Well, we found that was very, very difficult task. And there wasn't really many properties, if any, that fit that bill, especially any that we had clear access to. So after visiting a couple different counties' facilities, it's not uncommon that these facilities are separated. They're similar in nature because they're all under the solid waste umbrella, but they're different in their functionality. So the idea that they happen to be at the same park is not a necessity. So we took a different approach and started looking at that in regards to some of the properties that we already owned. And what we came up with is also between looking at other counties, particularly Charleston County, they have a really large facility, which they intend to use as a multi-use or a multi-county facility. But it's much bigger and much larger than our needs. So they're not even running full capacity at their facility yet. So we thought rather than aim in the direction they are, let's take care of our own waste There still is capacity available in what we're scoping out for us to take on additional streams of waste. But we looked at different places that fit the bill between south of the Broad, where a large part of the trash and recyclables are generated, and something which we have control over. And what we came to was the Public Works South Campus, which is about 5 acres in size. So with that, what we're scoping out at this time is a building about 22,500 square feet that would fit our needs for this facility and for the amount of tonnages that we currently have and what we anticipate in the future. So we went forward and put out a RFQ for this. The RFQ came back. We had 2 proposals. HCR was the most qualified, and we coordinated with them to develop a scope for this, of which the contract scope came out to be $316,000. We already have funding for this amount of work right now under a 2020 GEO bond. And so the recommendation to committee would be that we approve the architecture and engineering for this design and engineering to HDR to the contract value of $316,000.
Okay. Comments or questions on that?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Gerald.
I'll second.
Second, Alice. I think one of the reasons we brought this up at PFC the last time was just so people would know where we were looking to go with it. Have you gotten any pushback from the community about the site that you're proposing?
Nope, not at this time. We'll continue to coordinate with, this is all within the unincorporated area, but it is near Bluffton. It's also in an industrial area, so it's not necessarily a new use, and it's not even near any residential. So we feel like based off that location, it meets a lot of the criteria that we were looking at. So we haven't got any comments yet, but we'll continue to coordinate.
This is right down near the Palmetto Breeze Depot, if I understand, remember correctly. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, just quickly, Jared, environmental friendly, is that going to be a major consideration as you move forward with the design and development and the operation of this facility? Being environmental sensitive.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, anything that we're going to do, especially in the vein of solid waste, is we're going to try to do it in the most environmentally sensitive way. So if there's measures that we can do to make this as green as possible, both with our power collection, whether that's solar or our stormwater, we'll definitely take a look at that during the design process.
What about odor?
So this will be totally enclosed. So this is not the same as household waste. So this is just recyclable. So one in itself, it's not very odorous, just the material. And secondly, everything will be processed indoors and covered. So there should not be an odor associated with this facility.
Question.
Thank you.
Alice?
Do you think the municipalities will be able to alter their contracts so that their recyclables could be brought to this facility?
So that's part of the, after we
Plan.
get moving forward with the design, is to start coordinating with the municipalities and see if they can indeed do that.
Okay.
And if not, then it would be once they move forward with the renewals, then hopefully they can incorporate that.
Great.
To source it to our facility. Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Mark?
The only I've got, this is in my district, know exactly where it is. Again, there's no residential homes there. I asked you before about noise. You said there shouldn't be any noise. The only thing that I can see as a negative, and I don't know how you figured out that you're a much smarter guy than I am, is actually the traffic that's going to have to go down those 2-lane roads from any direction. It would be Burnt Church. It would come from Foreman Hill. So those are all just normal 2-lane roads that you've got. So that's the only thing that I'd say we need to be careful about is the additional traffic of big trucks that are going to be coming through there.
No, absolutely understand. And that's a reasonable option to take a look at. So we are in the process of looking at Burnt Church to make some improvements on Burnt Church. And then this will be much less invasive than the concrete trucks that are already coming down the roads to the concrete plant nearby.
Okay.
And again, this in its function, this is not solid waste. This is just recyclable. So the tonnage is much less. So the level of truck traffic, although it'll be more than what it is today, is not to the level that you would see in a transfer station or a landfill.
Okay. I think we did a motion, right?
I think we have a motion. I don't know that it was acted upon.
Okay. Any objection to this design contract for $316,000? Seeing none, this stands approved without objection. I don't have any other comments myself. I notice we need somebody for the County Transportation Committee from District 9.
That's my
Is that
district.
your
So
district?
I do have 2 people in line. So I'll have someone there shortly.
Well, good. We'll anxiously await that. Any other comments from members or from staff for the good of the cause? If not, we stand adjourned. All business having been